Welcome to Last Week on Instagram, and this is where we dive deeper into my Instagram posts where we can, I can talk to you a little bit more about things that I gotta make a 3 second clip and then not too long, not too wordy caption. Here we can, really dive into these things, why I put them up, why they're important. Excuse me, guys. Unacceptable, embarrassing, unprofessional. But yeah, let's just jump straight into it. So the first video that we are going to be looking at is a two-breast race strategy. So we look here. I don't think I had any sound. Yeah, I didn't have any sound for this. I was rusty, guys. We have Josh Prino, and he starts off with a 1.6 racing stroke tempo. You can see that glide, and then he finishes with a 1 second stroke tempo, right? So he's really turning it over. And the thing I want y'all to realize, it's kind of hard to see if we walk. I can go frame by frame. Let me see if I can figure this out. All right, if you look at his kick, his kick is driving him into his line. If I could slow it down, I could show you. Whereas here, the kick is happening right there. His back's going over the surface. He's using gravity for speed. And then here he just moves the kick further up in the sequence. So the significance of this, those of you who are in our Rakely Technique Solutions, and it's the sprint timing versus the distance per stroke timing. Now with the sprint timing, the shoot needs to occur early enough so that the kick, the push back, occurs and finishes at the correct time relative to the shoot, which is 0.15 seconds, and the head going down, which is maybe a little longer, right? Let's say 0.25 seconds, right? So the kick is actually, I think it's 0.3 or 0.4 in and 0.3 out. So it's like 0.75-ish or 2.5, maybe 0.6. So it's 0.35 in and 0.25 out. I think it might be what it is. No, it's 3.5. Now, 0.2 of a second is not that much big of a difference from if you shoot first, right? So you would sweep, you would snap shoot is the sweep, snap shoot is the cadence, right? But you would sweep, you would snap, so you'd have that 0.35 loading, and then you'd have your shoot happen. So by the time the shoot would occur, you would have about 0.15 to 0.2 seconds left before the kick would actually start. So this moving the kick earlier allows you to make sure that when the shoot happens or as it's nearing its completion, the kick is firing at the correct time. And as we train it, ideally we're trying to get to the point where the kick is pushing the body to flat. But that doesn't happen if you don't kick early enough. Whereas with the distance per stroke timing, like I said, the shoot takes about 0.15. If you wait till after you shoot, you're going to have that 0.35 loading time where nothing happens, where the kick has to come in. You see what I'm saying? So it's not just trying to swim faster. It's moving your kick into a different place in the sequence so that you affect when the completion of the kick and the shoot occur, which in sprinting we want to be at the same time. So that's why I really like this video. There's not a lot of high skill work in swimming where, you got to dribble with your left hand, you got to dribble with the right hand. If they cut you off, you got to go behind the back, in and out, spin, bump them, get the foul and one. You don't see a lot of skill in swimming. And, everybody else here, they just try to swim faster. You can see Will Lacone and Cortez, like they're just swimming faster, but they're still kicking late in that distance per stroke timing. And the kid who moved his kick earlier up in the sequence swam faster. He's getting, you got to think if you're going a 1.6 tempo, let's just say they got down to a 1.4 in 3 seconds? Let's see, what's 1.4 times 1.28, no, 2.8, 4.2, 2.8 again, 4, 6, 7. So they would do 5 strokes in 7 seconds. He's going to do 7 strokes in 7 seconds. That extra 2 strokes, it looks about as much as he won by, right? So having these, your skill work correctly, I think is, I'm not going to say the next evolution in swimming because it's here, but it's something that needs to be made a lot more common and used if you want to win, right? The kid who has the highest skill level out there won. There's no mistake about that. Let's get into our next one. So the early vertical form. So here I think we went specifically into the high elbow catch. And The reason why I want this video is one, kind of flex on everybody, but they don't teach, like, in all the videos I see when people talk about high elbow catch, they always do this and then they have like a ball and they push back with their forearm. But they never tell you, okay, the shoulder needs to move like this. The elbow needs to move like this. Once that all happens, you need to make sure that you turn your wrist against the grain, right? Because if you're just doing a high elbow catch, and I've seen kids do this, right? They turn it over and they catch and they're like this and then they pull this way and then they go into it correctly. When you need to be catching out front, boom, turn it against the grain. And if I see kids catch inwards, I can usually tell that, okay, they know what they're doing. Maybe it's, inwards instead of straight down, which is a little extreme, right? Past where we want to be. But it does tell me that they know where they need to be and they're doing the skill. They just need to fine tune it. So, I wish it had gone more viral because, like I said, I think this is like when I'm asking y'all to subscribe and like and share and turn on the notifications, like help us get boosted in the algorithm. Like this is why, right? Like I said, all the videos I've seen on a high elbow catch in early vertical form, they just show you like how it's supposed to work. They don't teach you what to twist, what to bend, what to turn in the opposite direction, how to push the shoulder out of the socket so that it can turn that way instead of being in the socket. And now you can only get to it by turning way out here because that's when the shoulder has that mobility instead of out front where it has the mobility because you push it out of the socket. Like we're trying to get this information to everybody. And our common, I won't say thank you, let's just say a testimonial, right? I get is how coaches are able to help people that they didn't know they could help. And like, that's why I made this. Like I fell through the cracks, right? I didn't know how to pull correctly. I didn't know how to swim correctly. And when David Marsh told me that, like once I learned how to, I was like, okay, he's right. Like I didn't know shit before. So sorry guys, it's a running joke. We get in front of the camera, my nose, everything gets itchy really. But, like, and I was 38th in the world. Like I stuck out like a sore thumb. I had great swims. I was clearly a talented athlete. And if I can fall through the, cracks, anybody could. My brother was, the 8th fastest 50 sprint freestyle in his class, gets here his freshman year. He's an August birthday, so he's young. And out benches the entire swim team, UT's men's swim team. Barely breaks 1999 was his fastest time in college. So, please subscribe, guys. Please leave comments. Please share it. We want to get this information to people who need it, right? They need help. We have the answers. Help us help them. Okay, let's get to this next one. Okay, so I really enjoyed watching this video. So one of the things, right, we watch his recovery. I think I even talk about it. Elbow, look how wide he is from his hip. And the reason why that's so important, if we're talking about surface area, right, and I'll draw this out actually. We want to make sure that the hand is pulling in a straight line back, right? Now the arm moves in a semicircle, right? So if I have my arm fully extended and it moves, sorry guys, I kind of got a little bad dimensions, but it's going to push out and then swing wide and come in. So what you have to do to actually keep it in a straight line, once you get to the point where you're pushing back, is the elbow has to bend to compensate for the length, right? So if the arm stayed long the whole time, you'd end up at the maximum length away from the body here in the middle. But when you bend it and you go into that catch, you shorten it and then you extend it. So this makes sure that your force travels in a straight line. And this is why I say this wide exit point is so important, because it tells us that this athlete is pulling in a straight line, right? Instead of, maybe they get here, right? And then they swing in because maybe the elbow's still bent, right? So, like, I love seeing that straight arm exit or that extended arm that's wide, because it means all the force that he generated went straight down the pool, pushed him straight forward down the pool. I had some commenters talk about his arm that's recovering, and I want to say this because I think this is a very important thing. This is how I teach now. This is how I teach it. the backstroke recovery. Well, this part I've always taught, but the out sweep part and what looks like crossing over is new. So the way I teach the backstroke recovery is with the teacup drill. Obviously, if you're in our mailing list, you saw me talk about this. And the problem that arises when you have rotation as a primary focus in your beginner swimming levels. So not beginner, like you're, you know what I mean, whatever. So, right, we go with the teacup drill. So behind your back, you have to turn it till it's thumb down so you can put that teacup down, which if I bring it forward is there, right? So we got to turn it down so that way we can put the thumb down. Okay, so that's the teacup drill. Now, when you do this, if I am here, when the moment that I turn this, my shoulder turns, and this makes my arm go wide so it can pass by my shoulder. Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, I told y'all. My nose gets crazy on me. So I need to make sure that it has to go wide. It can't. Now, if I don't do that, I can go narrow, but it gets stuck. Okay, which obviously we don't want because then we have bent elbows a lot of times, especially with our younger swimmers. So when you do this, it locks the elbow tight and it makes us go wide. Now, if I am on my side, when I turn into that teacup drill, I am right down my shoulder line. Okay, or pretty close to it. Like the more I get on my side, the more I'm down my shoulder line. Now, when we look at this, you see, I mean, you're on my shoulder line. Right here, look how wide that is. All right, look how far behind my head that is. Okay, it's a lot wider. Like my hand obviously is extending out this way. It's a lot wider than you realize it is. So, and then once I get past here and I get behind my back and I roll, if I over roll, boom, I'm now crossing over. So my response to this, I know Coach Jake, shout out to Coach Jake, he asked me a question about that, right? Somebody else asked me a different question that was kind of similar. Wasted movement to the side before his catch. Now, those of you who are, especially if I coach your kid on their technique, you will know that I pretty much abandoned the way I was teaching backstroke. Not that it wasn't working, but it wasn't working up to, like, I consider you, if you work with me, you want the best of the best. You want the elite stuff and the results that come with the elite stuff. And I just wasn't satisfied with the backstroke. So I did my research and basically everything that I was doing, I want to say, this I'm going to say it because this is honestly what I believe too. I think it was so effective in making power that it was like wearing out the athletes too fast. Like to where it's not something you could train your way around. Like it was so far right that it had gone left. It's a great way to say it. So I dropped it. How champions do. Dropped it like a bad habit. Started implementing it, and one of the first things I realized was that the importance, and I'd been against this to a degree, and as just a literal out sweep, but I did teach my athletes to push out, like pull a lot of direction in that. So I was on the right path, but not utilizing it correctly. And what I learned was I call it the back skull, which is when you do the teacup drill, like you have to reach behind your back, and if you do it right, you're pushing this way, right? So you have your teacup, thumb down, I'm gonna turn, boom. You have to reach behind your back, and if you're sculling, you push while you're this way. So I learned that this, and that what I just showed you, the back skull, that's kind of even a newer adjustment that I'm learning to start preaching to my athletes because it gets them into the correct position faster and make sure that the recovery is even more clean than it was before. But I'm learning that this back skull, like it forces the athlete then to out skull, like instantly, because they're going to get here, they immediately have to turn to go out, and then they're into their catch. So I say it to say, like, you gotta, that could be the right thing. You know, I think that because, and this is where Leon Holler, you need to fine tune it. Like, this is kind of one of the things, and if you, like I said, if you follow me, if you read my content, you're in the mailing list. If I coach your kid, a lot of times, like, these types of mistakes are just because the athlete naturally learned it doing another drill. So he was probably doing teacup drill and then learned that he needed to, you know, reach back or back skull to make sure he could actually get it into his out skull, right? He's probably taught the out skull, but learned he needed the back skull to actually do an out skull. And he doesn't know he learned that, right? But we can see it on video. So what we do with our technique solutions is we teach the kid like these actual cues. Like I just said, like turn it so that way it has to go wide. And then if you reach behind your back, you're going to end up in your shoulder line, right? You're here in your shoulder line. And then when you roll, even though I'm way out here, in my shoulder line again. So is he wrong? I don't know. I need to see more camera angles. But I know that like the errors he's making, if I'm right about, or they have a place in the stroke. That's what I mean to say. Now, they're clearly rough around the edges. And I think, like I said, that's from him naturally figuring out the solution. Like he'd probably teach a kid teacup drill. Be like, oh, this is how you do it. You do teacup drill. And it's like, no, like there's a lot more to it than just that. You just naturally figured it out. And we actually teach the kids the things that these naturals figure out. So there you go. All right, our last video, breaststroke knees. I love this. So I've been saying this for a while now.
On the medial proximal tibia, you see how it runs in this kind of diagonal path? Well, that'll allow it to internally rotate the tibia, unlocking the knee. The muscle has a twisty path of pull because its job.
Okay, so one thing I want to be clear about, what he's talking about here, is when the knee bends. So when it's locked out, the hamstring can't just bend the knee. This thing, the popliteus, has to activate first before the hamstring can take over. And that makes the knee rotate. So out of like totally straight, locked out knee, the popliteus makes the knee rotate before it can bend. So, and then the ACL, your MCLs are what snap the knee back to straight. So anyway, all that to say, like, I knew it was a rotation. And I had people in my comments. This is kind of a response to this video right here, where I had a lot of people saying like, one, they wanted the content. Nobody bought, but we're working on that. We got the answers you're looking for. Clearly, you're looking for them, but we didn't do a good job on our end of convincing you we had what you're looking for. So, I got to get better about that. But I was talking about how sometimes like it's okay you don't have breaststroke knees, right? You just don't have it. Like your knees, your ACLs, your popliteus, like those things, like they're not built to be narrow knees, so hip width, and then have the feet super wide, right? Like you just don't have that range of motion, and that range of motion amongst land athletes is an ACL tear, right? Like if I wish I could show y'all. Oh, maybe I can. Let me think about this. No, I'm not going to do that. Right, so how do I draw this? Right, so this is my knee. Here's my foot. When my body decells, my knee goes over my toes, and my toes can kind of stop my knee from extending too far. Now, when that goes sideways, when I would decel, there's no toes in front, so my ankle can kind of roll over, right? Let me see. Oh, I can't bend that arm yet. I hurt my wrist. The leg can kind of just roll over, and the knee just keeps going while I'm trying to extend it. And that knee trying to collapse while my ACL is trying to twist it, because it's going this way, right? And my foot is this way. So my foot's trying to pull my leg into this direction, but my knee is collapsing this way. And that torque on the ACL is trying to pull in the right way while the knee is collapsing itself, going the other way. And remember, those are ligaments, so they just connect bone to bone. It's just like a rubber band in there. And they're not muscles that pull and create power to make sure it turns out right. So they just snap. And that's how you have those ACL tears. And it is a breaststroke position. And, I remember I was watching this YouTube page, and they were talking about the Texas running back Jonathan Brooks when he tore his ACL. And when you watch him run, you can see his feet pointed out this way. And I remember seeing that, I was be like, oh no. Same with Arch Manning, knock on wood. I'll find some wood later. Oh, right behind me. But he runs with his feet out this way. So his knees can just spill out over his foot technically. But yeah, if you have breaststroke knees, like it just means that you can get into this dangerous position pretty safely. You got that extra range of motion in your ACLs, your popliteus is strong enough to pull it out there. And for those of us that don't, like we see here with Kate Douglas, you're just going to have to get a lot wider, right? You're going to need to get your knees outside your hips. You're going to need to squat a lot wider so that you can have that range of motion where the knee angle changes more, so now your foot can get out that wide into that space. relatively easily. And, it's just a part of being a swimmer. It doesn't mean you're wrong or right. It just means you're different, and you're going to need a little bit of a solution. And like Kate shows us, you can have this super wide kick and still be successful. So, yeah, let us know what you think, guys. Like I said, we saw in the video about the early vertical forearm and teaching people how to use their shoulders, how to use the elbow, how to turn the wrist. Our purpose is to get this information out to as many people as possible so that they can save athletes and fall into the cracks and get people the content they need. Like even in the case of Leon Marchand, right, we can clearly see that he does a lot of great things naturally that need to be fine-tuned by actually learning the awesome things he figured out and knowing how to harness them. So, there's always the next Leon coming up. There's always another me falling through the cracks. So please subscribe, like, comment, help us get pushed in the algorithm so we can help get these technique solutions to the people that need them and help everybody win this swim game. Comment, like, share, turn on that notification bell. Peace.